Welcome to Hard Script.
She said it on a Tuesday night, standing in the doorway of the bedroom, still wearing heels, phone glowing in her hand. No touch this week. I need space. She didn't sound angry. She sounded managerial, like she was rescheduling a meeting. I nodded once. Not because I agreed. Because that's how I acknowledge instructions. My name is Mark Reynolds, 44, head of operations for a commercial real estate portfolio that spans 6 office towers and 3 mixed-use developments downtown. My days run on access badges, service logs, lease clauses, and quiet fixes no one notices unless they fail. I don't raise my voice. I adjust systems. Claire works in development for an event agency. She builds momentum, creates urgency, sells proximity. Her calendar lives on her phone. Her currency is attention, and every room she enters tilts slightly toward her. That night, her phone didn't leave her palm. I didn't ask who she needed space from. I didn't ask why a week suddenly required a no-touch clause. I watched her walk past me, place her phone face down on the kitchen counter, and pour herself a drink she didn't finish. At 6 the next morning, I was already dressed. I forwarded 3 emails from our joint inbox to her work address. Vendor confirmations, a charity RSVP, a brunch reservation for people she'd invited without asking. By 9, I'd transferred my name off 2 shared obligations and moved them into a holding calendar marked internal only. By noon, I was at a leasing office 2 blocks from her agency. Short-term furnished unit. Quiet building. Doorman. Month to month. I signed without negotiating. The number was clean, spoken once, approved. I paid the deposit from an account she'd never needed access to. That evening, I placed the keys on the kitchen island. 2 sets. One for her. One for the building. She stared at them like they were props introduced too early in a scene. She said something about not meaning this kind of space. About how it was just a week. About how I didn't have to overreact. I didn't correct her. I picked up my jacket, checked a maintenance alert on my phone, and left to inspect a rooftop HVAC unit that wasn't actually broken. Over the next 3 days, she posted photos from site visits. Closed frames. Smiles angled just off camera. A familiar older man appeared twice in reflections. An investor who closed projects fast. Someone whose name I'd already seen in her forwarded contracts. On Friday, she moved into the apartment. On Sunday, she texted that it felt cold. By then, I was already appearing alone at openings. Calm. Occupied. Logged into a life that no longer required her credentials. The cold didn't arrive all at once. It settled in layers, like a building after tenants move out, but before utilities shut off. Empty, but still humming. Monday morning, I approved a service ticket for a parking gate at one of our Class A properties. The request came from a shell company I didn't recognize, routed through a law firm downtown. Same building where Claire's agency had just pitched a private launch event. I noticed the overlap because I always notice overlaps. By 10, I had the firm's LLC pulled up on my screen. By 11, I knew who sat behind it. The investor from her photos. Robert Hale. Late 50s. Public profile. Clean press. Known for moving fast when he wanted access. Not just to projects. To people. I didn't confront her. I adjusted calendars. That afternoon, I reassigned myself to oversee facilities for the building hosting her event. Temporary conflict resolution, on paper. In practice, it gave me sightlines. Badge logs. Vendor names. Timing. Claire stopped by the apartment that night to grab shoes she'd forgotten. She moved through the space like a guest checking out. She mentioned the apartment felt sterile. Said she hadn't slept well. Said space wasn't supposed to feel like separation. I listened while reviewing a fire suppression inspection report on my phone. She watched me scroll, then stopped talking. The next day, her agency's event permit hit my inbox for approval. Rooftop. After hours. Limited guest list. Investor-backed. I approved it with one added condition. Security handled internally. My team. On Thursday, Robert Hale arrived early. I saw him on the cameras before he reached the elevator. Confident walk. Familiar posture. He'd been here before, even if the log said otherwise. He always came through someone else. Claire arrived 15 minutes later. Different entrance. No overlap in the lobby. Clean. Intentional. I didn't watch the event. I watched the exits. At 9:42, they left together. Separate cars. Same direction. The cameras caught nothing improper. They never do. That night, Claire texted that the apartment still felt cold. Asked if I was angry. Asked if we were okay. I forwarded her a calendar invite instead. Subject line neutral. Separation of assets review. No message body. Friday morning, I moved my remaining personal items out of our shared place while she was at a site visit. Just what was mine. Nothing sentimental. Clean inventory. I left the thermostat at her preferred setting. By evening, she posted a photo from a dinner table with stemware and city lights. No faces. A hand on the edge of the frame that didn't belong to me. I muted her notifications. By the end of the week, the distance she asked for had acquired square footage, locks, and policies. And it was no longer something she could negotiate. By the following Monday, the separation had developed a rhythm. Not emotional. Operational. I woke up alone in the shared place for the last time, folded the spare set of sheets, and left them on the bed untouched. I locked the door behind me and handed the keys to building management on my way out, the same way I did when a tenant vacated early. No ceremony. Just documentation. At work, I authorized a vendor switch for a property Claire's agency used regularly. Same services. Different provider. Subtle delay built into the workflow. Nothing dramatic. Just enough friction to stretch timelines. By noon, I received a forwarded email from her assistant asking about access badges for an upcoming walkthrough. I approved one badge. Hers. No +1. No override. Claire stopped texting questions and started sending statements. About how this wasn't what she meant. About how space wasn't supposed to feel like eviction. About how she felt like she'd been pushed out. I didn't respond. I logged. Wednesday night, I ran into Robert Hale in a lobby I managed but never advertised. He didn't recognize me at first. Most people don't. I was just another man with a tablet, scanning floor numbers. He spoke to someone on his phone about timelines, about how Claire was sharp, adaptable, willing to do what projects required. He used her name like an asset class. I adjusted the building schedule so the elevator bank he preferred would be offline the next morning. Maintenance window. Necessary. Approved. Thursday, Claire showed up unannounced at my office. Not dramatic. Controlled. She said the apartment felt colder every night. Said she didn't understand how a request for space had turned into structure. Said I was acting like a stranger. I didn't invite her to sit. I continued reviewing a compliance report. She mentioned Robert by name for the first time. Not directly. Just referenced how pressure in her industry worked. How access mattered. How certain relationships were strategic. I nodded. I already knew. That evening, I rerouted my presence entirely. Different gym. Different grocery store. Different commute window. I stopped appearing in places where she expected friction. Silence expanded when there was nothing to push against. Friday, a mutual acquaintance tagged us both in a photo from months earlier. A memory surfaced publicly, out of sequence. Claire commented quickly. I removed myself from the tag without reacting. That night, she sent a longer message. About how the apartment echoed. About how quiet felt punitive. About how she didn't think I'd actually leave. I archived the thread. Saturday morning, I signed the last document severing our financial overlap. No lawyers yet. Just clean boundaries. Claire still had keys, but no leverage. By Sunday, she texted again. One sentence. Saying the cold was getting worse. She was finally describing the temperature correctly. The next shift happened quietly, the way pressure changes inside a sealed room. Monday morning, I received a facilities escalation from Claire's agency. Temporary power fluctuations during rehearsals. Minor. Expected. I approved corrective work for the following week, not sooner. No explanation required. Timing is its own language. At 9:30, Robert Hale's name appeared again, this time on a guest access request for a different property. Private walkthrough. Off-market interest. My building. I approved the visit and flagged it for internal escort, then assigned myself. He arrived alone, confident, unhurried, wearing the expression of someone used to doors opening when he arrives. I walked him through the space without introducing myself. He talked about upside, about speed, about how partnerships worked best when people were flexible. He mentioned Claire's name casually, like it was already filed. I noted the phrasing. Access, leverage, timeline. He spoke the way people do when they believe they're ahead of the process. That afternoon, Claire sent a voice note instead of text. She talked about the apartment feeling unfinished, about how silence felt different when it wasn't temporary. She said she felt like she was being punished. I didn't open the message. I let it expire. By Wednesday, her agency lost a preferred slot at a venue I oversaw. No explanation. Just a neutral update from my department. Claire called my office. The call went unanswered. Thursday night, I attended a donor reception alone. Same crowd Claire usually navigated. I stood near the service corridor, spoke to no one longer than required, and left early. The absence registered. It always does. Later, a photo circulated. Claire and Robert, blurred in the background of a group shot. Not touching. Close enough. Comments filled in what the image didn't show. Friday morning, I received a lease extension request from the apartment building where Claire lived. She wanted to add storage. Extra parking. Make the space feel warmer, maybe. I approved the request with standard terms and a note from management. Month to month. No long-term incentives. That evening, she showed up where I didn't expect her. A grocery store I'd switched to weeks earlier. She froze when she saw me, then approached slowly, like she was testing a boundary. She said something about not recognizing me, about how I'd become distant. I scanned my items, paid, and nodded once. The transaction completed without error. Saturday, she sent a final message. Said the cold was unbearable. Said she thought space would bring clarity, not this. By then, clarity had already settled, and the temperature she was feeling wasn't something I could adjust anymore. The first legal document arrived on a Wednesday. Thin envelope, neutral return address. I recognized the firm. Mid-tier. Efficient. Not aggressive. I didn't open it right away. I placed it on the counter, poured coffee, reviewed a facilities report about water pressure on the east side of a retail block. A valve issue. Predictable. Solvable. When I finally opened the letter, it wasn't a demand. It was an inquiry. Clarification of intent. A feeler. They were trying to locate the temperature of the room. By noon, I had already shifted mine. I forwarded the letter to my attorney with no commentary. He didn't call. He never does unless there's a problem. Instead, he replied with a single line confirming receipt and next steps. That afternoon, Claire posted again. No locations this time. Just a photo of a window, rain streaking the glass, captioned with something about quiet being louder than noise. People filled in the rest for her. At work, I signed off on a compliance audit that required my presence off-site for the next week. Different city, different hours. I booked the hotel under my name only. No shared calendar entry. No explanation sent. Robert Hale surfaced again that evening, this time in a business journal. He was quoted discussing a new project, praising the agility of emerging talent, mentioning Claire's agency without naming her directly. He spoke like someone claiming territory without fencing it yet. I didn't react. I adjusted travel plans. On Thursday, Claire requested access to a storage unit tied to our old address. The request came through building management. Routine. I denied it and approved a separate unit under her name at her apartment. Distance with documentation. That night, she called. The phone vibrated once on the table. I watched it stop. Friday morning, my attorney sent a draft. Clean. Efficient. Temporary separation. Asset boundaries clearly defined. Timelines precise. Nothing punitive. Nothing emotional. Just architecture. I approved it without edits. The delivery was scheduled electronically. No meeting. No conversation. Just confirmation receipts. By Saturday, Claire was posting less. The gaps grew longer. When she did appear, it felt rehearsed. Still frames. Controlled lighting. No warmth. I spent the weekend on site, inspecting a mixed-use property scheduled for turnover. I walked empty corridors, tested lights, checked locks. Spaces feel different when they're about to change hands. Sunday night, she sent another message. Short. Asking if this was really happening. Asking if we could talk. I forwarded the message to my attorney and archived the thread. The separation she'd asked for was no longer conceptual. It had weight now. Documents. Locks. Routes. And for the first time, the cold stopped spreading. It had reached its final boundary. The shift from separation to consequence happened without an announcement. Monday morning, my attorney forwarded a short update. Claire's firm had acknowledged receipt. No objections yet. No counter. Just a request for clarification on timelines. They were stalling, hoping emotion would re-enter the room and soften the edges. I was already in another city by then, overseeing a transition at a logistics property that hadn't been touched in 15 years. Empty offices. Old wiring. Systems that failed quietly until someone finally paid attention. I slept well there. On Tuesday, Robert Hale's name appeared in my inbox again, this time indirectly. A facilities request tied to a private dinner he was hosting for potential partners. Same venue Claire had helped secure months earlier. Same rooftop. Different tone. The request required my approval. I approved it with one adjustment. End time strictly enforced. No extensions. City code. Liability clause highlighted. The dinner ended early. Wednesday night, Claire posted nothing. No photos. No captions. The silence felt less curated, more reactive. Thursday, her agency submitted a revised proposal for a winter event series. Reduced scope. Lower budget. Robert Hale's name was no longer attached. Someone had recalculated risk. That afternoon, Claire sent an email instead of a text. Formal greeting. Careful language. She asked if we could meet to talk through things, said she felt blindsided, said she hadn't realized space could become this permanent. I didn't respond. I forwarded it. By Friday, the investor coverage around her agency cooled. No scandal. Just absence. Attention moved on. It always does. I spent the evening reviewing access logs at one of my buildings, tracing entries from months back. Patterns. Overlaps. Names that appeared together more often than coincidence allowed. Claire's professional world and mine had intersected more than she realized. Saturday morning, she showed up again. Not at my home. At a property I managed. She stood near the entrance, unsure if she was allowed inside. She looked smaller there, framed by concrete and glass she didn't control. She said something about not expecting me to disappear like this. About how she thought I'd argue, or negotiate, or fight. I checked my watch. A contractor was late. Sunday, my attorney confirmed the next phase. Documents filed. Timelines locked. Clean. Quiet. That night, Claire sent one last message. Short. Saying the apartment was still cold. Saying she missed the warmth we had before all this. I archived it without reading it twice. Because warmth isn't something you feel when the structure underneath you is gone. And by then, the structure she'd leaned on had already been dismantled, one approval at a time. The fallout didn't arrive loudly. It arrived as cancellations. Tuesday morning, 2 vendor confirmations Claire's agency had been counting on quietly expired. No rejection notices. Just unanswered follow-ups. I saw it because one of the venues sat inside my portfolio, and their booking calendar suddenly cleared. By midweek, Robert Hale vanished from her orbit completely. No mentions. No background appearances. No quotes in trade pieces. Investors like him don't explain exits. They just reroute. Claire adjusted fast. New posts. New angles. Different lighting. She leaned into urgency the way she always had, amplifying motion to disguise loss. It worked on the surface. It didn't work on infrastructure. Thursday, my attorney forwarded a final acknowledgement. All terms accepted. No revisions. No objections. The silence after agreement is always the most honest part. That afternoon, I closed on a small condo across town. Not an upgrade. Not a statement. Just functional. Close to my work sites. Neutral walls. Good light in the morning. I moved in with 2 boxes and a jacket. Claire found out through a third party. That's how things travel when you stop feeding the network directly. She showed up that evening at the old place. The one we'd shared. Building management called me because her name no longer authorized access. I approved a temporary entry window. 30 minutes. I didn't go. Later, a message came through. She said she hadn't realized how far I'd already gone. Said she thought distance was reversible. Said she didn't know space could lock behind you. I forwarded it. Friday night, she attended an opening alone. Same crowd. Different posture. People noticed. They always do when someone stops being mirrored. Saturday, I spent the day reviewing contracts for a new acquisition. Old structure. Good bones. Neglected. It would take time, but it would hold. Sunday morning, Claire sent a final attempt. No questions this time. Just a statement about the apartment still feeling cold, about missing the warmth of routine, about not understanding when things crossed the line. I didn't respond. I replaced my phone that afternoon. New number. Same carrier. Same device. Just no shared history attached to it. By the end of the week, the separation wasn't something being discussed anymore. It was something people adjusted around. Claire lost access slowly. First to me, then to the leverage she'd borrowed, then to the assumption that proximity guaranteed permanence. I gained something quieter. Predictability. Clear routes. Systems that responded exactly as designed. The cold she kept mentioning never reached me. It stayed where it belonged. The attempt to reverse it came through structure, not emotion. That was how I knew she was serious. Monday morning, my attorney flagged a new filing. Not a challenge. A request for mediation. Voluntary. Non-binding. The kind people use when they want proximity back without admitting they lost it. I declined through counsel before lunch. That afternoon, Claire changed tactics. She stopped posting entirely. No updates. No images. Silence designed to be noticed. In her world, absence was usually leverage. It wasn't this time. Wednesday, a mutual contact reached out under the pretense of checking in. Casual. Friendly. He mentioned Claire was struggling, said she felt disoriented, said she didn't recognize her life anymore. He asked if I'd consider a conversation. I thanked him and ended the call. By Thursday, Robert Hale reappeared briefly, this time as a rumor. A new agency. A different director. Claire's name floated near it, but never landed. Whatever momentum she'd built with him had been transactional, and transactions end when the terms change. Friday night, she showed up at my condo building. Different address. Different security desk. She waited in the lobby, coat still on, posture controlled but tight. She didn't have access. She knew that. Security called me. I authorized a brief visit in a public space. 10 minutes. She looked at the place like she was inventorying it. Neutral walls. Sparse furniture. No personal overlap. She said something about it feeling empty. Said she didn't understand how I could live like this. I checked the time. She talked about how the apartment she'd asked for now felt like a mistake. About how space had turned into isolation. About how she thought I'd push back, demand explanations, force a reckoning. I didn't. When she finished, I told her, calmly, that the separation was complete. That there was nothing left to clarify. That what she was feeling wasn't cold. It was the absence of control. She didn't argue. She just nodded once, like she'd finally received accurate information. Saturday morning, I changed my will. Not out of spite. Out of completion. Sunday, the mediation request was formally withdrawn. By the end of the week, the narrative around Claire shifted. Not dramatic. Just quieter. Less access. Fewer invitations. The rooms adjusted without her. I didn't celebrate. I didn't grieve. I walked properties. I approved repairs. I closed doors and opened others. The cold she kept naming had done its work. It had stripped away everything that wasn't load-bearing. And what remained didn't need warmth to stand. The last attempt didn't come from Claire. It came from the environment she'd relied on. A senior partner at her agency requested a meeting with my attorney. Not confrontational. Exploratory. They framed it as concern. Claire's performance had slipped. Timelines missed. Clients unsettled. They wondered if the personal situation was interfering with professional obligations that touched my properties. It wasn't a threat. It was a probe. My attorney declined politely and documented the outreach. That afternoon, I received a facilities report showing a request Claire had submitted weeks earlier had finally been resolved. New lighting in the apartment. Warmer tones. Softer temperature. She tried to engineer comfort back into a structure that wasn't meant to hold it. It didn't change anything. By midweek, the agency quietly reassigned her. Same title. Less visibility. Fewer flagship projects. Nothing punitive. Just a recalibration. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but changes the future. I noticed because the new director requested access credentials for one of my buildings. Not Claire. Thursday night, I ran into her again, briefly, at a crosswalk near one of my sites. No planning. No warning. Just coincidence. She looked tired. Not emotional. Depleted. She said something about things not going the way she'd expected. About how she thought she understood leverage, but hadn't accounted for what happened when it disappeared. I waited for the light to change. She said she didn't know how to exist without constant motion. Without negotiation. Without pressure. I nodded once. The signal changed. I crossed. Friday, I finalized the sale of the last shared asset. A clean exit. Funds routed. Accounts closed. No residue. That evening, Claire sent a message through a new channel. A professional one. She thanked me for handling things quietly. Said she hadn't expected that kind of ending. Said the cold had finally made sense. I didn't reply. Saturday morning, I walked a property scheduled to reopen after renovations. New tenants. New systems. Everything tested and ready. The building stood solid, indifferent to what had been there before. Sunday, I received confirmation that all documents were recorded. Final. Irreversible. Claire didn't contact me again. The cold she'd complained about never left her apartment. It followed her into meetings. Into rooms that no longer adjusted toward her automatically. For me, it never arrived at all. Because what she'd called cold was just the absence of noise. And silence, when you're no longer waiting for something to change, is stable. The end didn't announce itself. It arrived like a final inspection passed without notes. Monday morning, I woke before my alarm and didn't check my phone. I dressed, left the condo, and walked the 3 blocks to a site I'd taken personal responsibility for. The doors opened on time. The lights came up clean. The building breathed the way it should. At 9, I signed off on a long-delayed occupancy permit. New tenants moved in by noon. Trucks backed up, carts rolled, voices echoed briefly, then settled. A space became useful again. By afternoon, a courier delivered the last confirmation. Recorded. Filed. Closed. I placed the document in a folder, slid it into a drawer, and locked it. The drawer didn't get labeled. I passed Claire once more that week, indirectly. Her name appeared on a revised guest list for an event that wasn't happening in any building I managed. Smaller venue. Earlier in time. She wasn't the closer anymore. Just present. I approved a routine maintenance budget and left early. That night, I cooked for one. Simple. Efficient. I ate at the counter, washed the pan, dried it, put it away. The place stayed quiet without effort. Later, I walked the neighborhood. Same route, different season. Windows lit, then dark. Doors opening, closing. Lives contained by frames that held. The apartment she'd asked for renewed its lease automatically. Month to month. No upgrades. No notes. It would remain available to her as long as she paid and left no marks. Buildings don't remember. They only record. On Friday, a junior manager asked if I wanted to attend a reception. I declined and reassigned coverage. The decision didn't ripple. Saturday morning, I moved the last box from my car. Not heavy, just a jacket and a spare pair of shoes. I placed them in the closet and closed the door. Sunday, I reviewed the week's reports and shut my laptop without saving a draft. Everything necessary had already been done. The cold she named never entered my rooms. It stayed where it belonged, in the gaps created by choices that assumed leverage would hold. She asked for space. I gave her square footage, locks, routes, and time. When she said it felt cold, it was already too late to change the climate. I didn't leave angry. I didn't leave broken. I left aligned. And nothing followed me out.